Get my 6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from Homesteading Off the Grid and whatever this channel is about. Couple of oddities here the last couple of mornings. Yesterday morning, never seen anything like this. I finished my run, did just 30-minute run in 33 degrees temperatures. And afterwards, I always walk around for like 10 minutes to cool down before I go inside. It was daylight, but the sun wasn't up yet over the horizon. It was like 7:30 or so. And I was walking up the trail just on the outside of the woods here. And I always stop because, as you can see, the woods at this portion are pretty clear, pretty open. And I like to look in here because I can often see deer laying there waiting for the first rays of sun to come up. Squirrels in here, seen turkeys, bears, everything. And so I stop and I'm looking, and something flew through here. And you know what it looked like? It looked like a seagull, but instead of flying like this with wings out, if you can imagine, here's its head, here's its wings, it was like flying upside down like a V. And I thought, well, was it a hawk? It looked like a seagull. It's crazy. We are hundred to 120 miles away from the ocean of Virginia Beach. And it was so cold. So whatever, that was odd. I thought that was odd. And then number 2, if you can tell by a little bit of shakiness here, it's because I'm holding my camera today with my hand as I record. I always leave a tripod up here because half the time when I come up to make videos, I forget to bring a really nice tripod that we have that one of our viewers actually sent us. By the way, well, I'll finish the story, then I'll tell you that. Half the time I forget to bring that tripod, so I always have backup up here. It's gone. It's almost as if someone or something has been observing as I come here and tell these stories, and maybe I got a little too close to home with some of the stories I've told. And they took the tripod. He, she, it, or they. I don't know. So anyway, I'm holding this by hand today. No, I may have somehow put it somewhere else, misplaced it, but I always keep it in the same spot. It's been up here for 6 months. So anyway, but I want to make this announcement. I should have already. About a month or so ago, you may have noticed we took our P.O. box address off of our channel here. We used to put it in the description box. We allowed that to go closed. We didn't renew it. Nothing personal against anybody that sent us anything. It's just we were inundated. We appreciate all the gifts everybody sent. We have a room upstairs in our house that I use as my office. It's a bedroom, but that's where I write and read a lot of times and take long naps because there's a bed in there. It's full of stuff you guys have sent, and we're grateful and we appreciate it all. But we're kind of become, it's if you looked at that room, we would look like hoarders because of all the wonderful gifts you guys sent. And we just felt it was time to just kind of stop, because we're going to be living out in the yard and all y'all's gifts are going to be living in the house. So thank you from me, from my wife, from my son, from the bottom of our hearts for everything you've sent. But we've just decided to shut that down. So I wanted to make sure to let you know, if you've been looking for the P.O. box or whatever, that's why that's disappeared. Now, with all this said, it's story time. So, vertically challenged individuals who live under bridges, go ahead and type in the comments section. Story starts at 4:35. And hope I don't get sidetracked again, because then you'd have to go in there and edit it and say, story starts at 4:46. Unless I decide to hydrate, of course. Then you'd have to say story starts at 5:03. All right, so listen, I've had folks accuse me of being a warlock, being into black magic, all this stuff because of the stories I tell, the stories I write in my books. Some of the stuff you see going on back here in the background. That's not true. Just because I have somewhat of an interest in this stuff, particularly from a entertainment standpoint, it doesn't mean I'm a practitioner of these things, and frankly, I'm not. Not that I need to explain myself. But this is the lead in because sometimes we get people who are not accusatory, but concerned, and they say, you really need to be careful about what you're messing around with because you might open doors that can't be closed. Things might come through those doors that don't go back through. I agree with you completely. What I will say is that I don't feel as if I've opened any doors or portals here. I think here on this particular property from day one of us getting here, these things were already here. Whatever's going on here, and if it's this potential Bigfoot Sasquatch stuff, they've been around longer than all of us, if they are indeed here, and if this is indeed some of the stuff we've picked up in some of these videos. But I will agree with those people who tell these cautionary tales because of a cautionary tale I was told by a guy I knew in the Philippines named Tim, and I'm going to share his tale with you today. But we just, it's still early November here. We just had Halloween and All Hallows Eve, and we got a lot of comments, this holiday should be banned, and it's about ritualistic human sacrifice and all this stuff. No, it's not. And I've told stories about how it's celebrated differently in different cultures around the world. We had this story about, how it was celebrated in the Philippines. It is true that you must be careful what you are looking for because you just might find it. So this guy, Tim, knew him for, 6 months or so in the Philippines. I met him towards my final days there, just before I came back to the U.S. And he was from somewhere in New England. I can't remember exactly where. I don't think it was Massachusetts. Might have been Vermont, Connecticut. It was somewhere up there. And his story goes back to the days of the Pilgrims. You remember the Pilgrims went to Plymouth Rock, trying to escape religious prosecution. Well, it seems there were other groups that we don't often hear about throughout in our history who were also coming into the New World so that they could practice their religious beliefs, and some of those beliefs were in line with mysticism, witchcraft, black magic, all these things. That's why, we know about the Salem witch trials, and it was, this girl who had the hots for a married man that really got the whole thing started by accusing his wife of being a witch, thinking, well, that would be a good way to get rid of her so I could have him. That's how it all started. But for it to get to that point, folks must have already been on edge, and they were. And after you hear this story, you might understand why. So vertically challenged individuals who live under bridges, who like to tell people when the story starts, I tricked you. Now you want to say the story starts at 8:50, 9:03. So Tim and I met at one of our friends' bars. We had a friend named Marco from England that owned a bar and a restaurant, and a lot of the expats from Western nations would meet there, hang out. We enjoyed the common language of English, and we had a lot of other cultural aspects in common. Tim was a veteran, like myself. He was in Desert Storm. He's about 15 years older than me. His unit got to Kuwait just as that 43-day war was ending. So he actually, he was there, reared up, ready to go, trained for combat, getting ready to go into it, but then it was over. But he did 20 years in the Army. He was able to retire, get his pension, got got a little extra from the VA on top of that because he was airborne. He messed his back up, did a lot of jumps. I forget how many. It was less than 100, but more than 50. After he got out of the military, he used to like to run. He was never a runner per se, but he always enjoyed running, and he used it for weight management and whatnot, just to stay healthy. But he found he couldn't do it so much without pain anymore. But being a soldier, being an infantryman, and continuously moving forward, he decided if all he could do was walk, then that's all he would do. And being from New England, beautiful, beautiful place up there. I've been fly fishing up in Maine. It's absolutely gorgeous up there. He took up hiking because this now enabled him to walk through the beautiful forests of New England. And he met a guy. Tim's issue, he had trust issues, and a lot of us who were in the military do, and we're trained to be that way. There's this thing called OPSEC, operational security. You never want to know people, you never want people to know when you're going on mission, where you're going, what the mission is, especially interpreters, TCNs, they call them third country nationalists. The people, for instance, I was a machine gunner for convoy security team in Iraq. And so we'd have a gun truck, 10 tractor trailers to haul goods and supplies, gun truck, so on and so forth. And I can talk about this now because our time there is finished, and you can get this information on YouTube. So we'd have like 100 semi-tractor trailers and 10 gun trucks. I was usually the rear gunner. And that was, where you'd often have the suicide vehicle-borne IED guys coming up the most, trying to hit the trail of the convoy, especially if we got far behind playing slinky. It's not supposed to happen, but it always does. So I'm going to give you an example of OPSEC, operational security. Let's say, and this has nothing to do against any of these TCN's nationalities, religious views. It just happens. For instance, you take your laundry to the place on base where you get it laundered. You go, you drop it off, you come back, you pick it up the next day. If you leave anything personal in your pockets, say, for instance, you got a letter from home. Mom and dad wrote and told you they miss you. Your wife, your kids, and you accidentally leave that in your uniform pocket. That's worth a lot of money to those TCNs doing laundry because they can sell it to someone who has connections with the terrorists, and here's what they'll use it for. And this is a true story, and a lot of folks who were never in the military, a lot of folks who never deployed, don't know this. So let's say, for instance, mom and dad writes me a letter. I leave that letter in my jacket pocket. It's got their return address on it. TCN could get that, sell that to a terrorist for $100 US, which is about as much as they make in a month over there. These people don't get paid well. You talk about it's called war profiteering. Companies like Halliburton would be paid, for example, $100,000 per person that they employed per year. Okay, so they wouldn't hire Americans or Westerners who are used to decent wages to do those jobs. They go to places like Philippines, Nepal, Indonesia, where people work for $100 a month. Okay, like the average monthly income in the Philippines, for example, place I lived for 6 years. I know the culture. I was there. Kesaboko Visayan Ichaka Koalam Tagalog, which means I speak both Visayan and Tagalog. So I'm not talking about something I heard, saw on the news, or read in a journal. I'm talking about something I know. The average monthly income over there is about $150 US a month, which is about 6,000 pesos for them. So, for example's purposes, you have a Filipino guy in the laundry shop. He gets that letter from my parents. He has an opportunity to sell that to somebody local and make as much money off of that piece of mail as he would make in an entire month. And of course, Halliburton's profiting like crap, getting $100,000 a year to employ this guy for a year, but while he's there, they pay him $1,200. Yeah, and they keep the other 99, whatever the math is. It's 90, a lot of money, okay? Yeah, whatever. It's sickening. When you see how it really works, it's sickening. Okay, so now what happens with that letter once it's sold? Okay, Filipino guy just trying to take care of his family. He gets that money, he sends it back home to take care of his wife and kids in the Philippines. He's that much better off. Well, that letter then makes its way to a terrorist who now has my parents' address, and they have the copies of the letter you never want to get if you have someone in the military, the letter that your service member has been killed in combat. Well, they have like templates of that letter, and they simply put your name in there, and then they put your parents' names and address in there, and then they mail that registered mail, so your parents have to sign for it, so they think it's real, and then they open it up and they get a letter that their son's dead. That's an example. So that's why operational security is so important. You can't leave mail in your pockets. Now, in time, your parents would find out it wasn't real, you're alive, but what terror would they go through and what would they experience until that time comes? So, back to the convoy security thing, the machine gun trucks. We had these radar jammers on the front of our trucks that would block the signal when terrorists laid out an IED, improvised explosive device, usually detonated by a cell phone, and they're sitting, 100 yards away watching a convoy come through, and they see your gun truck coming up, and you get right there to where the bomb is. Well, they hit the button to blow the bomb. Well, the bomb doesn't go off, doesn't work. Then the truck it gets out of the kill zone, it gets in a safe range, then the bomb goes off. Well, that's done with radar blocking mechanisms, and they were in a little box on the front of our trucks. So one time, this isn't the story, I'm just giving you an example, and I guess I've segued here again. I've been told I do that. I remember one time we're in the motor pool, getting ready to go out on mission. Every night we'd take 100 empty tractor trailers up in northern Iraq to the border with Syria and Turkey. And then the next night we would escort 100 fully loaded trucks back down to Mosul, where from there they'd go down to Baghdad and throughout the country. Well, I'm sitting there, and this driver, who was from, I think, Turkey, he comes up, he sits down, he's talking to me. He spoke decent English, decent enough for us to talking, nice enough guy, I'm talking to him. Well, then he starts asking all these personal questions about the truck. And he's pointing at this box saying, what does that do? What does that do? What is the purpose of that box? I said, I don't know, man. I'm a machine gunner. I don't understand anything. He goes, oh, you must know what that box does. Is that how you block the signals? He knew too much, and I knew it. And I said, man, I don't know, but hey, we're getting ready to go. I got to go to the bathroom before I get in the truck and go. Well, I went to my NCO. I was an E4. I said, Sergeant, I think we have an issue. And I told him about the driver. They detained the driver, questioned him, found out he was trying to gather information to sell it, and they kicked him out of the country, and he was never allowed to return and work again. So Tim in the Philippines, he was big on trust issues. And again, you're kind of programmed to have those trust issues. And it's again, one of those things that once you turn it on, it's very hard to turn off. But Tim's trust issues didn't necessarily go back to his time in service as much as they went back to a particular hike he went on in New England after he had retired from the Army. Just a short while before he ended up going to the Philippines to live. And when I met him, he had been there for over 10 years. I'm sure he's still there. He might have come back now, but he told me he never wanted to. He wanted to stay over there with his Filipino wife for the rest of his life. Now, his wife, he had met in the U.S. She was over here on a working permit visa. And he met her while she was here. They started dating. They fell madly in love. Her visa expired, and she had to go back to the Philippines, which she did. And Tim's original intentions were to get her back over here and to live here. But he told her, he said, look, I will go to the Philippines. He had a passport. He was retired, get a little bit extra from the VA. Money wasn't an issue for him. He said, give me a few months to get my affairs in order, and I'll go to the Philippines to be with you until we can get you back to the U.S. on a permanent status, and we'll live here. Well, he ended up going to the Philippines, falling in love with the place, which is easy to do. I mean, especially figure New England. Think about the winters. Okay, then think about going to a tropical paradise, 7 degrees above the equator, where they don't have winters because it's summer every day of the year. Trust me, it's a no-brainer. So there was about a 3-month period there before Tim went to the Philippines to be with his now wife. He was spending a lot of time walking, a lot of time hiking, trying to stay busy because he was getting down. He was feeling sad. He had the blues because the woman he loved was over there. I didn't hear anything or feel anything, but I tell you, I get caught up in these stories, and I got to remember to watch my 6. So you keep watching it too. And since I don't have that tripod, that right arm's about worn out. I'm going to have to switch hands here for a bit. So Tim knew this guy not very well that he used to hike with on occasion. Seemed like a nice enough guy, good enough guy. And he was encouraging Tim to go on this hike with him that would take about a week if they were to find the location this guy wanted to find. So now's coming the creepy part. So if you're timestamping stuff, you can say the story starts at 21:12 till I change it again. 21:22. So the guy told Tim that there was this abandoned cabin, abandoned cottage type place somewhere deep in the forest, well off the well-beaten path that he had always heard of, that he always wanted to find. He said that there was a pond there, out in the middle of nowhere, that was so full of trout that were never caught because this place was so hard to find. They had to be 2 feet long. He said if they were able to find this place, they could camp out there for about a week and just hang out in this secluded cabin and have a good old time and then hike back. It would take them a day or two to find the place if they were able to find it. So the guy told Tim it would be known by, if they were getting close, it would be known by Stonehenge type boulders sticking up out of the ground. If they were to find anything like Stonehenge type boulders sticking up out of the ground, try to find them arranged in a circle, and in the center of that circle would be this property that held this cabin and had the pond full of trout and all these beautiful things, this hidden paradise up in the middle of the forest in Vermont or Connecticut or somewhere in New England. So Tim thought, well, this will get my mind off of having the blues, having my girl being 9,000 miles away. So he went on this hike with this guy. They didn't find anything resembling Stonehenge type boulders on their first day of their hike. But on the second day of their hike, they did. About halfway through the day, Tim came across a boulder that he said was about 12 to 15 feet high, and it looked like a tooth. Well, would have been a bottom tooth because it was coming up out of the ground. So his buddy comes over and he looks at it and he says, yeah, this kind of looks like a Stonehenge type boulder, but it's only one. We've got to figure out if there's more. So they split up. And this is in the days before smartphones and all this stuff. This probably would have been in the late 80s. So Tim goes one way, his buddy goes the other. And they were carrying whistles, like a referee or a coach would use, so they could communicate. Well, they were apart about 20 minutes, half an hour, and he hears his buddy start blowing his whistle. So Tim blows his whistle back to let his buddy know he acknowledges the sound, and he starts making his way to him. His buddy would blow on the whistle about every few minutes. If Tim felt he was getting off course, he'd blow his buddy would blow his again, and finally met back up with him, and they found the second stone. So they mapped out, okay, one's here. They could see the direction the circle was going in, so they continued in an arc in the same direction. Sure enough, a little while later, they found another stone. To quicken the speed of the story, here at 24:15, they found all of them. And they circled an area of about 2 acres. So they started heading towards the center of that 2 acres. And about a third of the way in through the circle, they found this beautiful pond. And they could see trout in there, the likes they'd never seen before. They were so big. So they knew that part of the story was true, and they were close. They made their way around the pond to the other side. It wasn't that big. And sure enough, they found the cabin. Now, I'm adjusting here. The other hand's getting cold, so I'm going to switch hands, put that one in my pocket. That looks like a field back there, doesn't it? So the cabin was, Tim said, it had to be centuries old. The foundation was made of stone, and the majority of the stones had crumbled. But there were still walls, there was a roof, there were holes in it, but it was more like a lean-to by this point rather than a cabin because it had fallen down so much. Wear and weather, the seasons, the wind. So Tim and his buddy, they set up camp, and one of the things they did while they were there for almost a week is they did some repairs to the cabin with natural materials. Basically, they made a shoddy, leaky lean-to a slightly better, shoddy, less leaky lean-to. They would fish at the pond, caught bigger trout than they'd ever caught anywhere. But Tim, after they were there a day, by the second day, he felt as if he was becoming depressed. And his buddy told him, he said, your girlfriend's 9,000 miles away over in the Philippines. You haven't been able to call her because you're out here in the woods with me. He goes, just, take it easy on yourself. Rest up here at the lean-to, do some repairs if you want. I'm going to go out during the day and do some more hiking, looking around. If I find anything of interest, I'll come get you, take you out so you can see it. But just rest up, take it easy, So that's what Tim did. He lay around the cabin, rest up. But what he found was, and a lot of folks who've had the blues at times, and we all have, it's natural. And I learned this years ago. I've been told this, and I remember this to this day. A lot of times if we're down, if we're depressed about something, or if we just don't feel so good, and we can't figure it out, it's like everything in life is good. I have great relationships with the people in my life, and our needs are met, and sometimes you just feel bad. Well, the worst thing I've found that you can do during those times is just sit around and do nothing and focus on how bad you feel. One of the best things you can do is get out and get active. Just go outside, go for a walk, go for a hike. Yesterday afternoon, my kid was in school, my wife was out with one of her friends, and I found myself getting in that state. It's like, wow, this is kind of boring without them here. I don't feel so good. Don't know why. I had a great run this morning, getting back in shape, and life's great. And so I just went outside and split firewood for like 2 hours. And man, 10 or 15 minutes into it, I wasn't feeling bad anymore. I was feeling great. So, and Tim knew this, but he couldn't do it. He just felt like he couldn't do it. He just kept feeling worse and worse, tired, sluggish, started taking very long naps. And it was during one of these naps that he had a super crazy dream. He had a dream that he was strapped down to an altar, a stone altar, and there was a cult around him. They were chanting. There were tiki torches, or torches of flame, burning fire, very druid type atmosphere, and they were going to sacrifice him. Now you understand why I was talking about that at the beginning of the video. If you pay attention, it always comes back to what I started with. So it was like some sort of ritualistic human sacrifice. So he woke up with a start, first time he had this dream, and his buddy had made his way back to the lean-to that once was a house or a cabin, and he told his friend about this dream. And his friend seemed really, he wasn't shocked. He was surprised, and Tim could tell that there was some sort of reason behind his surprise, but Tim didn't know what it was. And Tim, being a good, veteran, OPSEC, trust no one, at that point, that's when he knew that his friend probably knew something more than he did. So they stayed another night. The next day, Tim woke up, and he said it was one of those days when you just wake up and you just feel like you don't have any reason to get out of bed. He just felt so depressed. His buddy went out for a hike. Tim said, I'll go with you. I want to go with you. I think I need to get out and about and move around so that, I get rid of this moody blues feeling. And, boy, there's a throwback. Who remembers that band from the 80s, Moody Blues? I think they were English. So his friend encouraged him to stay at the cabin. He said, no, just stay here. I think you just need more rest. Stay here and, think about, you and your girlfriend and your upcoming trip to the Philippines. And Tim had never been there at that point. So he stayed back. And again, he got depressed, got tired, fell asleep, had the same dream, but this time it was more vivid. So Tim woke up from the dream, and he starts looking around the cabin. His gut was telling him there was more to this place than just a rickety old lean-to-ish type cabin out in the woods. He said there's got to be something to these stones, these Stonehenge type stones, up here in New England that date back around the time the Pilgrims came over. Something happened here. What was it? So he starts digging around. He found a human skull among the rubble of those disintegrated stones that were the original foundation of that old house. And when his buddy came back, he said, okay, what gives? I found a human skull here. What is this place? So his buddy comes clean to a degree. He says, look, I didn't want to tell you this before we came up here because I was afraid that you might not come. He said, but urban legend has it that this is where a cult, back in the days of the Pilgrims, another group of people who left England to come to the New World for religious freedoms, but it wasn't Christianity or even Puritanism, it was Satanism, used to have human sacrifices there. The Puritan/Pilgrim movement or whatever actually sought them out, found them, and killed them all. And the legend states that they cursed the land, they cursed this ritual site before they perished. And Tim said, is that all there is to it? And my friend says, yeah, as far as I know. But still, OPSEC, spidey senses, instinct, gut feeling that we're all born with, but which we're conditioned not to listen to in Western society and especially in American society because you might offend somebody. You get a bad vibe from somebody, you think this isn't the kind of person I don't think I know. Well, that's offensive. What has that person done to you? Well, nothing yet. Hang out with them long enough, they will. In the military, you are trained to turn those gut instincts back on, and guess what? They keep you alive when you go to combat if you listen to them. Yeah, I still have them, and I don't want them to be turned off because they've helped me in a lot of other places as well. So the next day, Tim had his nightmares again. He woke up the next day, he says, I want to leave. The guy says, let's give it one more day. It's so beautiful up here. We'll go tomorrow. We got to, make sure we have our plan down anyway. All right, whatever. Dude takes off hiking, goes fishing. Tim goes back to sleep. In his dream, his most vivid dream yet, a cultist has what looks like a primitive tool, a very primitive tool, a form of a knife. The blade was made out of slate, and it was leather tied to a handle, and they were getting ready to slice his throat, sacrifice him to their pagan whatever they worshipped. He woke up with a start and found that he had the very object that he had dreamt of in his hand. This thing was somewhere hidden in the rubble of that lean-to cabin, and he was holding it to his neck. Just after he had awakened and found this, his buddy comes back, and Tim had stuff packed. He said, we're leaving now. Come on, let's go. And his buddy could tell he meant no nonsense. So he gets with him. They start off on that long hike. They get through the woods, and his buddy's going, what happened? You got to tell me what happened. And you can tell his friend is excited. He wanted gory details. So he said, I'll tell you what happened. I almost killed myself in my sleep. And his friend said, oh my God, the stories are true. And he said, what stories? And he said, dude, I didn't tell you this part, but this place is called the Suicide Cabin. He said, the legend says that anybody that actually finds it, who's stayed there for any period of time, more than a day or two, kill themselves there. That's the story. So Tim felt that explained the human skull he found buried in the rubble, because if it had been from a human sacrifice in the 1600s, it would be dust by now. We all come from dust, and to dust we'll all return. This thing had been, this skull had happened within the last probably generation, 2 generations. He felt as if his buddy was trying to set him up to take his own life so that he could prove these stories were true. Tim punched this guy in the face as hard as he could. He marched right back to that cabin. He lit it on fire. He set it to blaze, and he burned it to the ground. His buddy caught up with him, of course. His nose was bleeding, and they took off out of there. Took him, day and a half to get back, better part of 2 days, and they were civil on the way out. But Tim said he never spoke to that guy again. Certainly never went hiking with him, never got around him again. And this came up because, Tim knew I was a writer, and he asked about, what do you write about? And I'm like, paranormal, urban legends, folklore, cryptozoology, all these things. So he shared that story with me. And he told me it's unfortunate, I get it. If I'm in a combat zone, I can't trust the enemy. I can't trust people that might be working for the enemy. But it was so unfortunate that there in New England, I couldn't trust a fellow hiker. And that's part of the reason Tim decided to stay in the Philippines. Once he finally made his way over there, then again, he fell in love with the climate, the culture, the food. And that's where the woman that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with, that as of the time I left 5 or 6 years ago, he was still with. So I appreciate the concern of a lot of you folks who put in the comment section, be careful what you look for, you just might find it. In Tim's case, him and that guy that he went hiking with, they found it. Tim wasn't looking for it, the other guy was, and he found it, and unfortunately what was on the other side of that veil found Tim. Fortunately, not to the extent that it almost did. So there's your story for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will join me again tomorrow for another one. And for now, I've got to try to find a tripod and a sideways flying seagull. See you for more next time from here at Homesteading Off the Grid. And whatever the hell this channel is about.